I mean, just look at the Byzantine self-contradiction of these people. It's dizzying. Okay, so first you're pro-Zionist, you're pro-Israel, right? So that means that you believe that Israel has a right to exist, that Israel must exist in order for the Jews to have a safe homeland, which is the same thing as saying that they're neither welcome nor safe in your own country. And it's the same thing as saying that being a Jew is somehow more important to you than their being a citizen, because, uh, they're considered a Jew, they're considered Jewish before and above and beyond being American or French or British or what have you. Otherwise, their homeland would be the homeland of their land of citizenship. They'd be Americans and British and French, but somehow uh, being Jewish diminishes the protections that are guaranteed to citizens. So, because you and your people are so self admittedly anti Semitic that you can't be trusted to not commit another Holocaust. So, the Jews need to be somewhere else for their own safety. And somehow this is regarded as the pro Jewish, non hateful position. And the Christian Zionists are even worse. We know that the only reason that they want the Jews to be gathered in Palestine is so that they can be wiped out in some apocalyptic Holocaust, according to their twisted understanding of the Bible. And they think that this is going to bring back Nabi Isa alayhi salam, who, as far as I know, never advocated genocide against the Jews. But these Christians expect for Nabi Isa alayhi salam to be happy with them when he comes. And they're going to explain to him, apparently, that they supported a genocide against the Palestinians in order to keep the Jews in Palestine so that they could all also be wiped out. So they supported death and destruction of two peoples in order to bring back the Prince of Peace. And this all makes sense to them somehow. And these are the same people, by the way, who will say that Islam is a death cult. But that's not the end of it. That's not the end of their self-contradiction. Most of these people, these pro-Zionist types, these pro-Israeli types, they're also anti-immigration, but they completely support free-flow immigration to Palestine. They want their own citizens to be allowed to immigrate to Palestine. They're Jewish citizens. They want them to be able to go without any restrictions into Palestine. And the immigrants that they send over to Palestine end up serving in the IDF, bombing hospitals, murdering women and babies, blowing up homes, shooting children, and committing cold-blooded acts of terrorism. So they're not sending to Palestine their best people, to paraphrase Donald Trump. They're sending over bad hombres. They're sending terrorists to Palestine. And they get radicalized in America. They get radicalized in Britain. They get radicalized in Europe. And then they send them over to Palestine to commit acts of terror. The Western countries are absolutely flooding the Middle East with terrorist criminal immigrants. And then they have the nerve to point their finger at Muslim immigrants in the West. The hypocrisy and the self-contradiction is just stunning. And it's still not all. There's more. They keep talking about how many people allegedly died or were killed on October 7th and express outrage and disgust and expect everyone to condemn it. But we know perfectly well, and we know because there are witnesses on record, and there are even perpetrators on record. So we know that there was a significant number of the people who were killed on October 7th who were killed by the IDF, but somehow that doesn't cause outrage or disgust or merit condemnation. Apparently, Israel has a right to defend itself against itself. I mean, we're over 2 months into this now, and they still haven't produced any evidence to substantiate what supposedly happened on October 7th. The only thing that we know for sure happened is that soldiers were killed by Hamas, because we've seen that on camera. And we know that civilians were taken hostage by Hamas. We know about that. And we know that the IDF killed civilians. That's what we know. That's what there's evidence of. Anything more than that, I guess we have to wait for the Steven Spielberg production that apparently is in production now to show us all of the alleged horrors committed by Hamas. I mean, let me guess. This is going to be like, instead of Schindler's List, it's going to be the IDF There Is a List guy. You're really not giving Steven Spielberg a lot to work with here. But they say all this like it makes sense. Like this is a world in which any of that makes sense, where you could say those things and have it be logical and sensible. They pretend that treating Jews who were born and raised in their own countries, citizens of their own countries, they treat them like they don't belong there, like they're immigrants, and they need to go to Palestine in order to be safe from them. That their American and European citizenship won't protect them. And they treat that like it's a pro-Jewish position. It's mind-blowing. The only thing more anti-Semitic than Zionism is Christian Zionism, which is literally motivated by a desire for the Jews to be wiped off the face of the earth. But that's not anti-Semitic. And then in America they sing about from sea to shining sea. But when we talk about freedom from the river to the sea, that's genocidal. I guess that's because for America, it literally was genocidal. Maybe that's why. They don't understand how there can be any sort of coexistence between an immigrant population and the indigenous population. All they know from their own history and from their own experience is that from sea to shining sea must mean bloodthirsty, wanton killing from coast to coast. So they think everyone is like that. That makes sense to them. And that's what peace means in their minds, in their psychopathic, mass murdering mentality. And if you don't support genocide and destruction, then you're a terrorist sympathizer. I'm telling you, these people are insane. That's why I'm saying that the US needs to be expelled from the United Nations. They're arrogant, belligerent, violent criminals. I'm telling you, the wires in their head aren't connected right. I think you can get Russia and China's vote in the Security Council for that. I think France's vote can probably be won. I don't think it would be that particularly difficult to win over France, and I think the UK could probably be persuaded to abstain, and then the vote would go to the Assembly, to the General Assembly. I mean, the Americans are so arrogant that they have politicians in America who themselves talk about withdrawing from the United Nations because they just think that, or they're just open about feeling indignant that the United States should ever be expected to adhere to international law. Watch. Raising this issue is going to expose the rift between America and the rest of the world even more. It's going to isolate America even more, and it's going to diminish American influence globally even more. And this is already a trend that has its own momentum. This is already happening. The American paradigm of international relations, of hegemony, of strategic deterrence, of balance of power, divide and conquer, all of that. This isn't what the world wants. And I don't think that it's even what the owners and controllers of global financialized capital want today. America needs to be contained. Their people and their politicians are unstable. Their system is corrupt and cruel. The private sector has usurped their power as a nation. And they're already being sidelined. I mean, did you see how Vladimir Putin was welcomed in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia? It was positively triumphant. It was a deliberately ostentatious display of pomp and splendor. It's just like a girl posting pictures on Instagram of how much fun she's having with her new man because she knows that her ex is scrolling her account and she's just trying to make him upset and jealous. That was a deliberate message to the United States. They threw Vladimir Putin a party when they left Anthony Blinken sitting on the tarmac. It's not subtle. They treated Blinken in the Middle East like he's Fredo Corleone in Las Vegas. Well, the Houthis are disrupting shipping in the Red Sea, and this is obviously in coordination with Iran, which is coordinating with Saudi Arabia and Russia and China. So the biggest shipping companies in the world now are saying that they're going to bypass the Red Sea, which just means higher fuel consumption, of course, as well as disruption to international trade. This is money for oil producers. And it's a message going directly to the OCGFC that conflict is bad for business, all of which serves to just further push the United States out of the equation, all of which just serves to emphasize even more that Zionism is a liability, and all of which serves to emphasize that a new paradigm of international relations needs to prevail, a paradigm of harmony and cooperation, which are two words that do not exist in the American lexicon. I mean, of course, the neocons in Washington want to respond to the Houthis militarily, and still they hope that they can broaden the conflict into a war with Iran. That's a real risk. But I don't think that the OCGFC overall are going to be on board with this. It would obviously be devastating to the global economy, and it would only be profitable for a narrow set of interests. I mean, the fact that this is even being discussed, that there's even any talk about moving in this direction, again, it just further shows how insane the United States is and how important it is to contain and to isolate the United States. And I think, and I hope that they will be contained and isolated. And this again is the reason why it's important to raise the call for expelling the United States from the United Nations. Because again, just like with the pro-Zionists, everyone can see that the West is morally incoherent and morally incompetent, and they are just as incapable of being just and just as incapable of truly pursuing peace, and they are just as unreliable as a rabid dog at a daycare center.